Good afternoon and welcome to the November 17th, 2022 Talawanda Board of Education meeting at 7 p.m. We have just come back from executive session a few moments ago. All 5 board members are here. We went into the executive session for the purpose of to consider an investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, official, licensee, or student. At this point in time, welcome everybody, and President Meade will start the meeting.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. Dr. Thoreau, do you have a recommendation for the board?
It is recommended that the board approve the agenda as presented.
Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bothus. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Abowitz. Any questions or discussion? And if you would call the roll, Mr. Fauski.
Mr. Bothus?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Mr. Meade?
Yes.
Motion passes.
If you would stand, please, for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will begin tonight with our board reports. Dr. Knight Abowitz, the legislative liaison report.
Yes, the lame duck session of the Ohio Assembly started this week, and they expect a lot of activity this session. House Bill 151, which has teacher residency program changes in it, seems pretty uncontroversial. House Bill 333 has a model job descriptions for school counselors. House Bill 492 requires coaches to complete a student mental health training course. House Bill 497 would eliminate requirement for retention in 3rd grade reading guarantee, and that looks likely to pass. And then House Bill 554 would help ease the teacher shortage to help give 2-year temporary licenses to people with expired teaching certificates and licenses. And the other thing that is getting a lot of press at the moment is the proposal introduced this week to reconstruct, reorganize the Ohio Department of Education and State Board of Education and put it under a cabinet position in the governor's cabinet. And so that's receiving a lot of press and attention and was just unveiled this week. So there's a lot of things going on in the lame duck session, but a lot of the education legislation seems pretty uncontroversial that they're debating at the moment, except for the reorganization piece. So that's my report.
Thank you very much, Dr. Knight Abowitz. The arts and athletic report, Dr. Howard.
Thank you. I'm just going to do a few arts notes because athletics is going to be covered in total by Mr. Richardson tonight. I want to do a shout out to the marching band. They had a performance on Wednesday. Was that last week? It seems like longer than that ago. Wednesday last week in the evening for the public to show to perform their show that they were taking to a competition on Thursday. I had seen that show at the first football game, and they were still working on it. It was still incomplete. I was so impressed with how far they had come. That performance Wednesday night was just outstanding. They clearly have worked hard and put together an amazing and impressive show. The music department has also had many of their fall concerts already, very well attended and well received. Also well received was the recent theater production of The Greatest Christmas Pageant Ever. People really enjoyed that last weekend. I want to do one other shout out. This is sort of arts adjacent. I'm also a board member of the Oxford Area Community Theater, And we have space at the Oxford Community Arts Center, including a pretty significant storage space in the basement. And we needed to do a clean out of that storage space. And one of our members reached out to Frecia Caraballo with the Key Club, and wouldn't you know, we had 5 Key Club members along with Ms. Caraballo come on a Saturday morning and helped us clean out for 2 hours, and again, just really did a tremendous amount of work, and I'm gonna hire her the next time I have to move my house. She is like, get it done. So thank you to the Key Club members who came and to Ms. Caraballo for that assistance and making that connection with the community. So,
Thank you, Dr. Howard. Student Achievement and Academic Report, Mr. Bothus.
Hi. The elementary buildings had a wonderful time, according to Mrs. Mers. At the Class in the Court on Friday, Miami Athletics organized a great event, and Miami women's basketball team had a great win over Vermont. We love this partnership. It's been going on for quite a while, and they look forward to it every year. It's great to introduce students to that opportunity that's here locally. Mr. Davies stated that the Veterans Day Assembly was held last Friday. Students were very attentive throughout. The veterans and students alike appreciated. Mr. Davey invited them to a meet and greet on the gym floor after the assembly, and they had over 100 students come down to do so. And that's great to have that connection as well. The FCCLA recently finished 24th of 40 in the Life Smarts Knowledge Bowl. And then Lorelei Langmeyer received the 2022 Heisman High School Scholarship for THS. That's a scholar athlete, so I'm sure we'll hear about that soon. The second Coffee with the Principal was held on October 27th. That's a great conversation with the community members. And it looks like everybody is having a great time and reconnecting and getting ready for the Thanksgiving holiday and trying to avoid the crud in the process, because it always happens this time of year. So hopefully we're all flu-free.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bothus. And for the Butler Tech report, we had a ribbon cutting at our new natural science building in Monroe since our last board meeting. It is open and students are using it. It's beautiful. Bids have gone out for our 2 new buildings at Butler Tech, the Advanced Manufacturing Center in Hamilton and the Aviation Center in Middletown. So we're moving forward on those 2 projects. As always, I would encourage everyone to go to the Butler Tech website. You can read through their student success newsletter. And the only other news from Butler Tech that I just found out at our board meeting on Tuesday, which I would point out to Dr. Thoreau was 26 minutes long, is that Butler Tech has formed an alumni association and has already gathered many members for their alumni association. So that's good for the former students and for the institution. So that is all for the Butler Tech report. And Dr. Thoreau, you want to go ahead with presentations?
Absolutely. At this point in time, I'd like to call up our athletic director, Jake Richardson. He is going to present a fall athletic update. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come up here and do a quick recap on our fall sports season. Another successful season for Talawanda. We had 290 fall sports student athletes this fall. It again. There we go. Cheerleading, we had 22 student athletes. Competition cheer happens later in the season, but I did want to make sure they got recognized. Thanks for all the hard work and effort they put into making our athletic events so successful. Coach Eason and the girls do a phenomenal job of representing Talawanda and bringing an added energy to our athletic events. Boys cross country, we had 27 student athletes, SWAC champions for the 4th year in a row. Finished 7th as a team in districts, very competitive districts in Southwest Ohio. Max Bixler finished 18th individual and qualified for regionals up in Troy. So congratulations to him. Girls cross country, 14 student athletes, SWAC champions for the 6th year in a row. SWAC coach of the year to Amelia Overslake, so congratulations to her. SWAC runner of the year to Lucia Rodbro. The team finished 4th in districts. Again, another very competitive. Our district's super competitive for Division I. So qualifying for regionals up in Troy is a pretty big deal, and I got the opportunity to drive up to both districts and regionals and watch our teams and our girls team and Max compete, and very impressed with how they did, how they represented Talawanda, and fit right in there with a super competitive group of athletes across the board from our area of the state. Lucia Rodbro, also 3rd individual in districts, so pretty impressive. I know we had Lippincott the last 3 years, was run of the year in SWAC, so it's nice to, she left last year as a senior, and we had Lucia as a freshman step right up and keep it here at Talawanda, so pretty excited about that. Field hockey, we had 25 student athletes. We finished with a record of 2-11-1, a tie against Fairmont, and 2 big wins against Walnut Hills and Dublin. Much improved team, competing in a lot of games compared to last year, so it was fun to watch those girls play. Football, 58 student athletes, finished 5th in the SWAC, a record of 1-9, 1-4 in the conference. That record doesn't necessarily do our players or coaches justice, as our schedule this year ended up being pretty tough. Even some schools that aren't known to be, have good football teams rolled in with some of the better teams that they've had in multiple years for their schools. So we actually had 5 of our regular season opponents with 7+ wins this year, and 8 of our regular season opponents got into the playoffs. So we had to come to play each week, and players did a great job, coaches did a great job. They competed every week against some very good competition this year. Boys golf, we had 17 student athletes, finished 2nd in the SWAC, overall record of 25-7, 18-6 in the conference. Connor Schulte, he shot a 77 in regionals and qualified for districts. Again, very competitive in Southwest Ohio. To get into districts is a pretty big accomplishment. So congratulations to him, and a very good season for the boys golf team. Girls golf, 5 student athletes, finished 3rd in the SWAC, had an overall record of 6-8, 2-3 in the conference. SWAC Player of the Year to Keely Gorse, so congratulations to her, and she'll be back again next year. So. As you can tell from the picture, very close group of girls, had a lot of fun this year, so hopefully we can continue to build numbers in that program and keep it going. Girls tennis, 18 student athletes, finished 4th in the SWAC, had an overall record of 8-13. One thing with this group, I think there's only 3 or 4 seniors, so most of these girls are coming back for the future, so look to add more freshmen to that group and a lot of experience going into next season. Boys soccer, 33 student athletes, finished 4th in the SWAC. Very competitive SWAC conference this year in boys soccer. Had an overall record of 5-12 and 4-6 in the conference. Logan Kent led the team and was 2nd in SWAC with 19 goals. Girls soccer had 40 student athletes, finished 3rd in the SWAC. Overall record of 6-9-1 with 3-4-1 in conference. Played host to Western Brown in the first round of the OHSA tournament on a cold, windy, rainy night, and they battled it out, and unfortunately we lost in overtime, but it was a good game, very competitive, fun to watch 2 equal teams compete to try to advance their season. Volleyball had a very successful season, 31 student athletes, finished 2nd in SWAC behind a very good Harrison team, battled with them, both matches they played against them this year. Had a SWAC Coach of the Year with Coach Dunwoody, so congratulations to her. Overall record of 18-7 and 8-2 in the conference for the varsity team. Our JV team finished 20-2. Our JVB team finished undefeated at 19-0. In OHSA tournament, varsity team swept both Coleraine and Lakota East in 3 sets, and then we crossed paths with Ursuline in the 3rd round, who ended up going on to dominate the rest of the tournament. I think they might have lost 3 sets the whole entire state tournament and became state champions. So in our girls, they really did. 2 of the 3 sets we played, we competed right there with them all the way to the end. So it was fun to watch. Very good group of players there, and it was a very successful season. Obviously, thank yous. We have a lot of thank yous, and there's more than what's on this list. But thanks to all the senior athletes and their families. Marching band always brings another level of energy and excitement to the athletic events that they're a part of. Coaches, assistant coaches, head coaches, volunteer coaches, all the time and effort that they put in. Athletic trainers with Greg Daniels and Kendall Kramer, phenomenal at what they do. And we're very fortunate to have them part of Talawanda Athletics and Talawanda School District. Custodial staff, early mornings, late nights into early mornings on Friday nights after football games. If you have a problem, you give them a call, they take care of it. So thanks to everything they do. Staff and volunteers, gate and ticket workers, scoreboard, clock operators, announcers, concession stand workers. Most of those are volunteers. Parents sometimes, other student athletes from other sports working in the concession stands for different sporting events. So obviously all those people, our athletic events can't run without them. So they're kind of the backbone to everything that's being done. So thank you for all their time and effort. And Talawanda Athletic Boosters, always a big thank you to them for all the support. Again, another group of volunteers putting in their own time and effort to help support our athletic programs. And that's pretty much it from me. Any questions? Easy questions, hopefully.
Thank you for taking this on this year, and I know you had a steep learning curve with a lot of those elements, but you've pulled them together, and I think it's been overall a successful season. I'm always going to come back to recognizing field hockey. Again, my daughter played field hockey, and I didn't know until she did that it hadn't occurred to me that public schools, especially in Southwest Ohio, rarely play field hockey, have those teams. So they're competing against Catholic schools, which are girls who have been playing since middle school or elementary. So I know it's really hard to compete with those teams, and the fact that they came away with 2 wins this year is pretty darn good. So
yeah, and outside of those wins, and even the tie against Fairmont's a big one. If you go back and look at scores from the past and out, they were much more competitive.
yeah.
Much more competitive this year, much improved. So they were fun to watch. It was.
Good.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jake.
At this point in time, I'd like to call up Director Gregg and her team to conduct a STEM presentation. Carter, okay.
Good evening. It is always a pleasure to be able to present about one of the most phenomenal programs that I believe that we have at Talawanda Schools. It is our STEM program. We have been recognized, not just locally, but in the state for a lot of the STEM initiatives that we have here at Talawanda. It is my honor this evening to introduce to you Ryan Barter. He works in the Teaching and Learning Department. He is our STEM instructional leader for the district, and he's going to talk more about science, technology, engineering, and math.
Thank you. Good evening. We do a lot in STEM, and we've really done a lot over the last few years with just the development of the program. It started my first year in 2014, and it really did start with me getting hired, sitting in, at the time, Mrs. Spivey's office, and she says, well, what are we going to do? And I said, I thought you guys had the plan, and I was a part of the plan. And she goes, well, yeah, but you're the first part of the plan. We wanted you to be involved from the ground level. So it was really exciting at the time to kind of face with what's this program going to be and what's it going to look like. And so the first thing we did is I said, I just came out of the high school math classroom. I need help. And we had administrators and counselors and teachers and people who have been a part of this community say, we're gonna work with you. And so that was the creation of the STEM task force, where we identified what are we already doing well. We were already doing things like Science Week, where kids go over to Miami University. That had existed before I came here, and we said we should capture that and grow upon that and not have isolated little incidences happening in the district, which are very good. We need to have an overall view and a growth. So we started that task force, and then from there, that was the birth of the elementary STEM program. which Miss Roche was the first one to do that, and she just recently moved away. We miss her, but we are so happy for the work she did while she's here, and we're really happy Mrs. Schlager has come on to do that. So early on in that 2014 year, we developed curriculum, we purchased resources with the technology adoption, and really from that point on, when it comes to a lot of the STEM courses, we've used only federal funds or grants to continue the program moving forward. So, you know, when we started the program, a lot of people think about technology and they want to do the most exciting new things that are happening in tech, and then I highlighted this. This is the technology I learned when I was in school. So you'll see the green screen, and I did AppleWorks on a 5.25-inch floppy disk with no mouse, and I did spreadsheets. And I remember when the next year we got a sum formula because we were on a Mac Classic. I was so excited because before you had to add up the cells one at a time. and so if we were just teaching the technology, that's just not good enough. And so that's kind of what I highlight with our STEM teachers is that if we get excited about a piece of technology, that's great. We want our kids to be involved in the most recent technology, but it's got to be more than that. You know, we have to go beyond that. You know, there are great programs like HyperCard was fantastic. And when I first did web development, I'm like, yeah, it reminds me of HyperCard. And so there were links to the past. I got some smiles out of HyperCard. Everybody, you can tell who used to use HyperCard. People loved it. But it really was a good tool, but it wasn't enough for now. And so we can't, you know, this is a quote from 1915, but it still holds true, is, you know, we can't teach like yesterday. We have to be looking forward to tomorrow. We got to make sure that we're being in line with what is the newest thing, what's going to happen next. And so when we started developing the program, it's not what's the new technology, it's what do we value? What should we be doing? What should everybody be doing in this district when it comes to STEM? And that's really where we started, is STEM's for everyone. This isn't a selective program that's just for a certain group of kids that have certain GPAs or a certain background. We want every kid to experience STEM. And then when we said that, well, what's the important parts of what we do in STEM? And so we found from the Department of Labor, the skills to pay the bills. They said, if anybody wants to be a worker out there, they want to be a productive worker, these are the skills they need to have. We need professionalism, we need communication, we need to be enthusiastic about our work, we need to be able to work together. And so that's what we've built the foundation of our STEM program on. And so we've kind of developed these values of perseverance and managing frustration and critical thinking. So yes, we use technology, yes, we use engineering principles, yes, we talk about math and science, but the foundation of what we do starts here, where we sit down and say, what are we going to do to challenge our kids to think creatively, to deal with something they're not used to be frustrated and learn how to deal with that frustration, and not just have someone come by and rescue them, and not have the teacher who's always trying to be supportive come by and go, let me help you fix that. No. We're going to let them figure it out. We're going to let them get frustrated. We're going to let them learn how to cope and do with that, especially at the younger ages, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And so we talk about perseverance all the time. The kids know the word perseverance in the Talawanda School District because it's said so often in the work they do. And so we view that failure as not as something that just ends. It's a temporary thing. It's something that does happen. We learn from it and we move on. And we're trying to teach that with the coping skills and to grow some patience so kids can give themselves a break and they can give themselves an opportunity to say, okay, this didn't work, but something else will. And so we want kids collaborating. We don't let them work alone. There's time to work alone, but a lot of times we want kids working together because we know wherever they go beyond the elementary into the middle school, high school, and post-secondary plans and what they're doing in their career, you're not allowed to just work by yourself. Even if you're remote working, you're never alone. You're always on with your team in some part of the world. And so we need people to be able to learn how to work together, get along, communicate effectively. And in that part of communication, they got to be able to learn to be kind and to be good listeners. And so this is the foundation of the STEM program and what we're doing with our kids. And it's a purposeful act that we do K-12. So we try to make sure we have that vertical alignment so that it's not just an elementary program and it's not just a high school program. Our teachers meet. It's been a while. You know, COVID really dislodged a lot of those plans that we were moving forward with, but we still have those communication, and I still work with all the teachers to ensure that we have those values going from the elementary all the way through the high school. And we also ensure that we have STEM that doesn't just talk about collaboration, just talk about learning from your failure. We too try to, because we're taking class time up, we want to make sure that those skills are also aligning to what state standards are. So, if it's, there on the left, a group of kids, they're building with Legos, but we're not just building with Legos, that's fourth graders, and they're talking about landforms. And so in landforms, they had to build an island, and from the island, they had to draw a natural disaster card and realize something was going to happen to their island and they were going to have to do something with it. So how are we going to communicate? How are we going to figure this out together? And then in the middle there's just a poster from the past where we had kids code, and it's about photosynthesis, and it's about, so we're integrating science principles. But we've done coding on Ohio inventors and about the Great Serpent Mound and about, whatever Ohio history facts or whatever they're doing. So we try to make it flexible. So we're meeting with teachers, the classroom teacher, and saying, as we come into this classroom to teach them, we also want to value and do the stuff that you're doing as well and partner with you. And so we work on that alignment. But also, you'll see that top left graphic there. That's the 5-step engineering cycle. We do that through the whole process. And so it reinforces those values we have. This is also just a national thing you'll see with the 5-step engineering cycle. We make sure that our lessons are aligned with Ohio technology standards. We use Google as our platform like the rest of the district does. So as we're teaching this, we're not trying to find extra little new things out there. We're trying to integrate the technology kids already know, and we're trying to enforce it in a way that the teacher can now utilize even more in their classrooms. The bottom graphic there is about coding. As we code, we try to have, we don't want to have blips in the radar, so we have, block coding, which is simple, drag it over, and it kind of helps with the commands and gets the ideas of that problem solving there. And then we do the text coding once the kid reaches the high school, and usually that's a part of a College Credit Plus program, either with Cincinnati State or with the University of Cincinnati. So currently what we're doing in elementary STEM, you'll see that we have a lot of things going. Recently I've worked on the stream table on the top right there, where we're looking at how how water affects the land and what's happening. And so, it was supposed to be streams, but I didn't put the sand out properly. So we also got to talk about lakes that day, and that's fine, and in partnering with that middle graphic there, you'll see Josh Lawson with his mask on there. We did virtual reality headsets. So one group was with me at the stream table. Some kids were reading. Another group was looking virtual reality at landforms around the world. So we try to integrate that in. You'll see on the left, Ms. Schlager, she is doing rocket launches where kids are working with angles and learning how to, create their little straw rocket. And we are enforcing a lot of the measurement skills that we just see that are lacking. I think, kids don't use tape measures as much as they used to and things like that. And so we try to find ways to introduce those measurement skills and also capture that in a way that they understand how to collect data and then interpret it. Last graphic up there is about media balance. One nice thing with Ms. Schlager coming in this year, she has a passion about teaching digital citizenship to children. And I think we need to have a better kind of discussion about what that could be one day, but the idea of introducing it to kids and having discussions about what are the proper uses of your device you're using at school and at home and what the behaviors are, because we just can't expect it just to happen. We have to have those conversations and have kids recognize what are good practices to keep themselves safe and others safe. Middle school, I work a lot with Larry Brock, the middle school engineering teacher. They're always building in their lab and doing lab reports and figuring out and working together and collaborating and still instilling those values that we see at the middle school. Recently, he had an engineering fair where he assigned every group a different type of engineering and let them make a pick, and they had to present to their peers. You'll see the picture on the bottom right. Other classes came in. They had to present about what concentration in engineering they were working on, and they had to kind of create something. So the girls in the middle, they devised hands. They took string and ran it through straws, and if you pulled on the strings, it would make a fist, and you actually were designed to pick things up and do things with that. And so he's always doing a great job. He's doing CO2 cars this week, and then we're going to be flying drones. I'll be working with this class where we're going to code some drones that we got through an Ohio STEM Learning Network grant last year, and we're going to code those drones to do a lot of different things with kids, and they're going to build obstacle courses. And the goal of that, obviously, is to learn the coding and learn that, but also it's the collaboration, it's the communication, it's the problem-solving skills that I've been talking about previously. The high school, recently we had one of our University of Cincinnati students that's a graduate of Talawanda that went through our information technology courses, come back and talk to our students about her experience as a first-year student at the University of Cincinnati and what the courses at Talawanda has meant to her and how they have applied and where she's finding success. And so at the high school, we're always working with, the University of Cincinnati classes. There's 6 of those that wipes out your freshman year at UC if you decide to go there. We also have the video announcements classes. So as you're doing athletics and you see a live stream, that's coming out of the STEM program with Mr. Zimmerman's classes, going and doing the news and doing different events throughout the year. So where are we going next? So our strategic plan talks about for next year, we're going to reinstate that STEM task force, and we're going to try to get some community members involved with that. We did have, previously we had some community members involved in that. It was great to have the additional support and feedback from members of our community about what are we doing within the district and how can we find ways for our kids to go outside the school and find some experiences that will help with whatever career path they're choosing. And the other big thing, obviously, I could talk all evening about this, but just what's going on next. The one big thing I want to change is I want to get kids outside. And we already do a little bit of that, but I want to do more, and I want it to be more deliberate and more uniform and integrated into our curriculum. Not just a nice thing to go do, it's something we do, something we go do. You'll see there, these are all 3 pictures from Bogan. I know Mrs. Mers was here previously talking about the prairie. You'll see the prairie picture on the right. But we also have trails out back in which we have kindergartners walk on all the time. And we got a grant from Butler Rural for binoculars so our kids can go to the bird blind and look at different things in nature, and they make their observations in their notebooks about what they're seeing. And this is happening in other schools as well, but it's happening in pockets, and it doesn't need to be in pockets. It needs to be everywhere. And so that's the focus that I'm working on, trying to make sure that we have that integrated and our teachers have an understanding and a comfort about how to go out and do that. That continues at the middle school. Cindy Kettlewell, our middle school department head for science, has really spearheaded a lot of work. We have a weather station that the kids get their weather report every day on, and they're collecting data and observing what's going on. We have planters with different plants, and we just got a grant from some tables that are from recycled materials. And so we can actually have class outside. We have enough tables out there. We can actually just have our kids go out there and do some work. And then the picture on the right there, we have our greenhouse, of which that was built with science adoption funds a couple of years ago. We've gotten grants to get tables inside there. And recently, I know there was an article in the Journal News in August, maybe you saw that, where it talked about kids last year growing tomato starts. They sold the tomato starts to fund a garden club. So we're trying to get kids outside. And at the high school, we've been outside, which is good. We do stream tests. We go out on that, we're on 97 acres here, and we go and explore it. We have stream tests. We're grabbing crawdads from underneath rocks. We're doing type of work like that. And we, through grants and through some science adoption money, have been able to build that shelter. If you go out beyond the softball fields and baseball fields, you'll see that shelter. And there's tables so that classes, you can go out there and then meet back at that location instead of having to go all the way back in the building to kind of have your closing conversations about what information you've gathered that day. So we're moving forward in STEM. Like I said, there's a lot of other things we are considering doing and seeing about doing, and just the big thing is we try to find what's passionate for teachers and for students, and we grab a hold of it and we run with it from there. So thank you for the time. If you have any questions,
I have a question. This is kind of a curiosity thing. So I know again, my specialty is more younger children, pre-K through grade 5. And I know there was an initiative that began about 10 years ago to add an A to the acronym to make it STEAM instead of STEM, and the A stands for arts, with the idea that all of those, science, technology, engineering, and math all depend on creative thinking, and that the arts and the STEM fields are sort of mutually supportive. Is that kind of not a thing anymore, or was that just a kind of a pre-K sort of thing?
No, it's still around, and it's interesting from district to district. We kind of just have settled with STEM, but we want to explore all academic areas. I've been to conferences where they do STEAM They do STREAM, which when they do STREAM, the R stands for reading, and I'm like, aren't we just doing school at that point? But that's fine. I've seen STEM squared on the M, where the M stands for medicine, and so there's a lot of different acronyms. But I think the foundation of that is the ideas that, you know, like I said, the values we're doing in STEM. So we've kept it with STEM, but if we ever changed it, I'd be okay with that. But it is.
I'm not necessarily advocating
No,
for
it's
change.
fine.
I was just curious
I understand it, yeah.
where that landed there.
No, it's still around. You'll still see that on a lot of literature, but there hasn't been a consensus in the community about that.
Right, right.
I just wanted to thank you and recognize all the grant writing that goes into this work. We don't pay teachers extra time to write grants. You guys have done a lot of grant writing work to support all this innovation, and I want to recognize that and thank you for that.
Thank you. I mean, it's easy when you have, you know, one of the best parts of my job is when a teacher says, wouldn't it be cool if? And it's like, okay, that means they don't have time, right? They would love to do this, but they can't. And that's where people in our office can come in and say, okay, we can partner with you. Let's get the resources. Let's get the quotes. Let's get things lined up. And that's an exciting part of your day. I mean, I also like looking at data and on computer, but it's a little bit more exciting to work with a teacher on building a grant and getting that to develop and to see the changes that we can have, that moving forward part to how we educate our kids is great. Thank you, though.
And I have to say, as a fifth grade science teacher myself, currently, I appreciate the whole department, because one of the biggest challenges I have is I'm exclusively science, and one of the challenges I have is my students come to me without a history in science because it's such a resource-heavy subject, and it's intimidating to many people. If you had a bad experience as a student and you become a teacher, you're probably not going to teach it well, and you're going to avoid it at all costs. Not to mention the fact that I personally spend about $3,000 a year out of my own pocket in supplies because we don't have a budget for it. You know, and that's a lot. So what you're doing by going into the classrooms and teaching the teachers how to integrate STEM, STEAM, STEM squared, whatever you want to call it, is essential, because right now we're losing future electricians, journeymen, tradespeople, farmers, all of those, because we're not really introducing them at that pivotal age. You know, we're focusing on great things like reading and math, but we're taking away all those other important things. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and I agree. It's interesting. When we started this program, we wanted to have a non-traditional approach. We didn't want to line kids up at a desk and talk to them. We wanted to be involved. And what was interesting is that you would see kids that wouldn't necessarily find academic success in the way we normally measure it, find major success in the STEM program. Because if we're building a tower or we're doing something like that to work on some skills, you know, that's a different skill set than understanding your math facts. And what was interesting is, you know, you would have kids that helped work on Grandpa's tractor over the weekend, and they're doing a great job. And you're like, of course, working with straws is easy when you're used to welding and things like that. So we want to have those kids have some successes while they're in the school building. And so that it has brought in another way for kids to find success and find a home here at Talawanda. And it's really been great to partner with teachers in doing that. Thank you.
I just wanted to piggyback on Dr. Knight-Eibowitz's comment about the grant writing. Ryan and my department does a fantastic job with grant writing and all of the things that he mentioned. So when you hear things about drones and when you hear things about stream tables and all of the STEM activities and resources that we do in classrooms, while we do have teachers on the payroll here at Talawanda, all of those resources and all of those programs are funded through those grants, specifically federal grants like Title IV-A. So a lot of our STEM education funds come from Title IV-A. So I think it's really important to note that as we do this presentation, without some of those federal funds, we wouldn't be able to do some of the things that we do, plus the personnel that we have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
At this point in time, I'd like to welcome our wellness coordinator, Ms. Masachok. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you an update on the Health and Wellness Department and the work that has been taking place this past year. The infrastructure for our Health and Wellness Initiative is through the Talawanda Health Coordinating Council. And the mission of the HCC, Health Coordinating Council, is really to create a healthier community by addressing those non-academic barriers to learning. And we do that through program, practice, and policy change. And but it's very necessary to have the support and build upon the strengths of our families, our schools, and our greater community to make that possible. I do want to share tonight the data that has come to us from our student drug use survey. This is a survey that we offer to our Talawanda students grades 7 through 12 every other year. So this data that you're going to see now was from our students survey in November of 2021. 738 students did participate in this survey. This survey asks students about substance use and has measures along the lines of onset, frequency, availability, perceived risk, perceived disapproval by parents and peers, and other measures that we track year to year. There are newer questions on this survey related to mental, social, and emotional health. This is a very valid, reliable survey instrument that has additional honesty checks built into it to ensure the validity of the data. And it really is this rich data set that drives our prevention and early intervention programming, both within the district and at the greater community level. So here you can see the trend data. We've been administering this particular survey since 2001 in the Talawanda district. And we ask our students in the past 30 days, how many of you have used the following substances? We are pleased to see the decline that has happened since around 2005 for all of the substances that we track, that being alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, prescription drugs, and e-cigarettes. And so we have seen that downward trend. However, we know there's work still to be done. When we look at the percentage, and these again are the percentage of students that are reporting that, yes, I have used that substance within the past 30 days. We have the regional, kind of the greater Cincinnati area data, Butler County data, and our Talawanda School District data for the 5 major substances that are assessed through this survey. I was very pleased to see, while traditionally Talawanda School District has had higher percent of students reporting use than our Butler County peer schools, this is the first time that our percentages were lower than both the region and other Butler County schools. So again, pleased with the direction we're headed in, still work to be done. Highlights. Most Talawanda students are not using drugs, and we can't say that loud enough and more frequent enough, especially to our students. It is so easy for them to fall into the trap of everybody's doing it. And when I talk to students, we talk about the fact that, well, yeah, nobody's running around talking about you if you're not using, you're hearing all the stories, but you are in the majority if you choose to live a drug-free, healthy lifestyle. And I think that is so important to make sure that that is the social norm that is out there among students. E-cigarettes are the #1 drug of use among our students. Alcohol was for many, many years, and just like the national data has taken the same direction, it is true for Talawanda students as well. We're going to talk about some of the initiatives we're working on in that area in a moment. Marijuana is perceived as the least harmful drug by our students. It is a confusing time for an adolescent, I believe, in the world of marijuana, where it's legal in some states, not in others. It's medicinal in some states, not in others. So again, trying to make sure we give our adolescents good information, accurate information about the substance of marijuana. And I think it's really important to note that perception of peer disapproval is at its highest, meaning it's at its best, right? If you choose not to use because you think your friends would disapprove of your use, that's powerful. And a lot of the work that we're doing in youth-led prevention is working towards that end, that your peers want you to be making the healthy, safe, drug-free choice. We also do have some measures related to mental, social, and emotional health. And we need to think of the fact in the context of when this was taken by our students, November of 2021, coming out of something that none of us have ever experienced before. However, I believe that this is still often where our students are and where we need to continue to put a lot of effort. So Talawanda students, all or most of the time, you see the percentage there reporting that they're nervous or anxious, they're depressed, sad, or hopeless, or they have a desire to be alone all of the time. Those numbers are a lot, pretty high. I can discuss my personal problems with, and again, percentage reflects those students that say, I can discuss my personal problems with one adult in my home, often or a lot. And that is over half, one adult at school, 28%, one friend. Not too much of a surprise that adolescents are confiding in their peers. And again, that peer disapproval metric is really important for that reason as well. And one adult outside of my home and school. Again, a lot of our efforts here, letting students know there are caring adults both in and out of school that want to see them be successful, make good choices, and that are there for them when the times are rough. Emotional resilience. Can you pull yourself out of a bad mood? Less than half of our students say often or a lot. And so, again, building those resiliency skills is just absolutely critical, and we can do that by building those protective factors around our students with caring adults, good social peer ties, engaged in activities, giving back to the community. All of these protective factors will help build this. And finally, other mental health factors. So students are saying they're experiencing stress, suicide ideation, my emotions cause problems in my life at school, screen time on school day for non-school work, and video games have affected my school and work. And these are the percentages reported. Again, our students are stressed, are hurting. Again, this was coming right out of the probably most difficult time, but I would say that equally as difficult times are, being experienced now as people are trying to reconnect with one another and figure out what that means for our students. So how are we addressing all of these concerns and issues that we brought forth? And I'm going to share tonight some of the funding that has been provided through grant dollars that we have gone after to support Talawanda health and wellness initiatives. I want to give a special thanks to Mrs. Tefelsky and her office for all of your support in helping out with all of the grants and managing them in your office. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. So, the primary prevention grant through the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. This is a grant that we have been very fortunate to have for some time. It is a grant that is we have to go after and renew each year, so it's not a for sure thing. So this year's award to the greater community through the Coalition for a Healthy Community is $75,000, and this supports our youth-led prevention work at the middle school and high school. It supports our PACS good behavior game work and PACS tools, those programs that are trying to build those skills of self-regulation in our students. Again, getting back at those skills and those mental health indicators we were just looking at, when to press that go pedal in life and when to press that stop pedal, a critical skill. You see the picture there. I was so pleased we had the opportunity to train all of our transportation workers last spring in PACS tools. And that was a wonderful opportunity, and we're building capacity within the district to have more and more individuals trained in this. And then asset building, supporting asset-rich environments across our community. And one initiative that we're working on this particular school year is around ensuring that workplaces where our adolescents are working, we know from our PRIDE data that having a job is a risk factor. It doesn't protect a student necessarily. We want to change that in Talawanda. We want to make sure that our employers have asset-rich environments and are promoting values and making sure that our young people are working where there's drug-free workplace policies in place and it's known and they're enforced, and making sure that our youth are well supported. So we're going to be piloting with a couple employers here in town who employ Talawanda and Miami students and try to work on that with them to see what happens. So I'll report that next year to y'all. Building a healthier community, collaboration. This is our grant funding through Butler County United Way. This money is, again, just for this year. We apply every year, and it's a collaboration between Talawanda, the Coalition, Parkview Arms residents, and the management. And this particular grant helps support the Kramer Breakfast Club, one of several grants that help support the Kramer Breakfast Club, and the Parkview Arms Resident Council. The outcomes of this particular grant just really shine a light on the great work I think that's happening here. We know that 88% of the students who attend Kramer Breakfast Club in the morning that were on an attendance plan at the beginning of last school year did not need one by the end of the year. No discipline referrals came to the office for any Breakfast Club student last school year. Assets measured at the beginning of the year and end of the year by classroom teachers for those kiddos that participate in Breakfast Club increased. We had a grant said we want a 10% increase. 24.7% increase is what we saw. And then working with residents at Parkview Arms to really have a sense of pride, belonging, voice, and overall sense of safety in their community, we saw a 64.8% increase based upon the interventions that were taking place. Really powerful work happening for $1,000. So very excited with this work. As I alluded to before, Talawanda has been very grateful to receive a grant for around $43,000 for this academic year from Interact for Health. The purpose of this grant is to really look at e-cigarette use in the Talawanda School District, and we are doing this in a couple different ways. We are in the process of conducting listening sessions with students, staff, and families to better understand the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on e-cigarette use among youth. And so we're in the process of doing this, and the hope is that we're going to use this data then to develop and implement a social marketing campaign for students, by students at Talawanda Middle School and High School that will be very specific to the needs and the desires of Talawanda students. In addition, this grant is helping us to select and implement some cessation programming and resources for those students who say, yeah, I am using, and I want to quit and I need help. And we want to be able to provide them that help in addition to providing alternative to suspension programming, and knowing that keeping our students in school, providing them education on the dangers of substance use and the coping skills that I believe are potentially missing, and that's why turning to substance use or vaping, we can keep them in school and have better outcomes, I believe. The HRSA Rural Communities Opioid Response Program Implementation Grant. We are in year 3 of this grant. This was one that was received by a consortium of members, you can see there on the left, that applied, and we received $1 million to strengthen and expand services in rural areas to address prevention, treatment, and recovery of substance use disorders. This grant has been very beneficial to Talawanda and the coalition. We are the fiscal sponsor, or we receive a sub-award from the Butler County Mars Board, who is the fiscal agent for this particular grant. But it has supported programming assessment, such as our Panorama Social Emotional Learning Assessment platform, Calm Classroom, teaching mindfulness to students. SBIRT is going to be coming on board here, screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment as a way to look at substance use from very much a public health lens and ensure that we are providing the help that our students need, as well as other programs and initiatives that are listed here. It's been an amazing, I'd say, game changer to our community, and I'm so grateful that Talawanda is a consortium member for this particular grant. We are in year 3. This particular grant will end on September 30th of 2023. But I do know that a lot of great collaboration and programming have happened. And we are very fortunate that we just received notice this past August that we were once again a recipient for a 4-year grant, and we are in year 1 from HRSA once again to support mental and behavioral health of our greater Oxford area. Very exciting. The city of Oxford and Oxford Township were the only identified rural areas as designated by this federal agency in Butler County. So we were the only eligible ones allowed to apply for HRSA 1, as we're calling it. HRSA 2, we advocated and said, we are the Talawanda School District. Riley, Milford, Hanover, Oxford Township are very rural in nature as well. Please, can we include them in our service area? And they said yes. So for this upcoming grant, we are able to service our entire school district, and we could not be more excited about that. The consortium, once again, is this group of individuals. This time around, McCullough Hyde Memorial Hospital Foundation is the fiscal sponsor. They're the recipient of the grant, and so Talawanda will receive a sub-award for this first year as the subsequent years. And so we are very excited to partner with these individual entities to make this work possible. Again, very excited that our service area includes the entire Talawanda School District, as well as Miami University and its student population. The goals in the next 4 years to really address structural systems level barriers that rural communities experience to get quality integrated substance use disorder and mental health care, to improve the quality and sustainability of rural behavioral health care by coordinating efforts using evidence-based trauma-informed strategies, and improve the capacity of our behavioral health care system to address rural community risk factors and social determinants of health that affect the behavioral health that are very unique to rural residents. disclaimers that are required with the federal grant. And with that, I thank you for the chance to update you on the work that's happening, the exciting initiatives that we have taken place, the data that continues to drive all of our work. And again, thank you for your support over the years. Are there any questions?
Thank you. This is an exhaustive report of amazing efforts undertaken by the district, by the collaborations with other entities in the area and with our students. And that's the bottom line, is how does it benefit our students? And benefiting our students benefits our staff. Benefiting our students and staff benefits our community. So thank you for this work.
I'm just going to add a little to it. You know, Amy is often doesn't toot her horn as much. This is only part of what she
I
does
know. Yeah.
each and every day. I mean, this is amazing what she has shared. So I need to thank her personally for the work. I've seen her in action. I know when we're doing expulsion hearings and we're doing alternatives to expulsions, Amy is right there with developing plans with families, herself, and working through those plans. There's a lot more. Her position is about 60% funded through these grants. I don't know of other school districts that are so heavily involved. And we have students with needs, as you aptly said, and as you aptly said, we have work to do. We're on the right track and we're moving in the right direction, because if students can't focus, if they're anxious, if they have any of those type of precursor issues, that's what they're dealing with in school, which is interfering with the learning piece. You are knocking down those barriers with the partnerships in our communities, with our staff. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate what you do each and every day.
And Amy, you have a finger on the pulse of this new generation and generations to come. I mean, whoever would have thought that you kids would be smoking something that you put into a USB port? I mean, and 53.9% of our students are suffering from video game addiction. I mean, it's outside of most of our wheelhouse. You know these things and you're addressing it. You don't just know it. You're seeking out resources to address it and to help and support them. So thank you. We all owe you a debt of gratitude.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all of our presenters tonight. It's nice to allow Talawanda to showcase the many things that we do for students and how well we do them. So thank you to all three of the presenters tonight. Now we'll move on to the public participation. A reminder, when you come up, please state your name clearly in area of residency in the district. If you want to address the board, you'll have 3 minutes to address the board, and we'll limit it to a total of 30 minutes. So does anybody wish to speak to the board this evening?
Good evening. Annie Dittman, Hanover Township. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And thank you, board, for supporting the broadcasting and recording of the board meetings. That has helped our community understand issues and will continue. What I'd like to ask today is, moving forward, as you meet, I understand there will be some work sessions coming up. I would like to ask that this school board continue and broadcast and record the work sessions. Allow our community to see those work sessions. I ask you, why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you continue sharing this knowledge? So please consider that as you move forward and have workshops to have those broadcast and recorded. Again, I thank you, and I wish you all a good Thanksgiving and that you enjoy it with your family and friends. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board?
Good evening, Mike Dittman, Hanover Township. Hate to restate some of this stuff, but feel I need to. For over a decade, I've encouraged the board to be fiscally responsible. Now the taxpayers have spoken. They want you to be responsible with spending their funds. It is time for the board to make the changes required to spend within your means. I want to also comment on the levy facts that were on the website during the levy situation. Some of the information on the levy facts website was not correct and misleading. The cost of the levy was $570 per 100,000 of assessed value. There was a lot of confusion on that, and it apparently has continued. There's only one way to calculate the cost of the levy. I know some people have said there's more than one way. There's more than one way to explain it. You can use the appraised value to explain it. But when it comes to calculation, it's strictly the assessed value times the millage. And as recent as this Tuesday in the Hamilton Journal, there's an article about the levy that was authored by the Miami Student newspaper. They again stated the incorrect information about the cost of the levy, saying it was on 100,000 of assessed value, it would only be $199.50, which is not correct and very misleading. And I assume the Miami Student got the information from the Talawanda administration. I would just hope in the future that the emphasis would be placed on real facts to eliminate misleading information. And again, thank you all for serving, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board?
Hi, Aaron Abbott. I live in Oxford. Actually, sorry, I wasn't going to actually speak, but we saw lots of good athletics. We saw lots of good STEM. We saw really good work on mental health, emotional well-being. And then I sit here and listen to sort of the same tired complaint over and over again. The board should do their job. It's sort of vague nonsense. There's never specifics. To be specific, stand up here and have the courage to talk about what you really want to cut, right? Do you want to reinstate pay to play? What does that get us? $130,000 a year? Our deficit is what, $5-6 million a year? Do you want to cut transportation to the bare minimum? What does that get us? 300, 600,000? Do you want to try to force us to look at cutting staff? Who's going to get cut? Our counselors, our psychologists, our social worker? We just got done talking about some of the issues from depression and mental health issue, substance addiction issues. These are very real cuts. What we hear from people that have turned down the levy is just do your job, live within your budget. Well, those things have real ramifications. And so at least I would encourage folks that throw those out there to have some courage to stand up here and say exactly what it is that you want the board to cut. Don't hide behind vague facts. Don't hide or point fingers at the board when they actually implement some of these cuts that will have real impact to our children and our community.
Excuse me. You need to address the board, not other people. I think you're turning the other way.
How's that?
Yeah, address the board, please.
So,
your comment.
I would address the board by saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you have to listen to this on a regular basis, year after year, complaints around budgeting. I'm sorry you're going to have to listen to it in the future as you start to cut things. Still complaints again for why you're cutting things and cutting services. You will never win one way or the other until our community comes together and funds our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board? Okay, seeing nobody, we'll move on with the report of the treasurer. Mr. Trafalski?
Okay, it is recommended that the board approve the October 20th, 2022 regular minutes.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from October 20th?
So moved.
You came out, you have to abstain, you were not
I have
here?
to abstain. I was not here.
You were not here.
My
So moved.
apologies. That was a whole month ago.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Abowitz. A second, please.
Second.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Bothus. Any questions? If you would call the roll, Mr. Trafalski?
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Bothist?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Motion passes. I'm going to block a few items here, and it is recommended that the board approve the following items as presented. This is 6B through 6E. Approval of the gifts from Elizabeth Ann Settle for social workers taking care of Talawanda, J. Francis and M. Hicks for students in need at Talawanda Middle School, Oxford Presbyterian Church for students in need at Kramer, and an anonymous donor gifting Kroger gift cards for students in needs. Thank you all for your generous donations to our buildings and our families. Approval of the modifications, the appropriation modifications, and approval of any then and nows over 3,000, and approval of the October financial report.
Can I get a motion to approve 6B, C, D, and E?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Otto. And a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Dr. Howard, any questions or comments? I would like to add to the thanks to the individuals that donated. It looks like mainly to students in need. I think that's says something very nice about those individuals in our community. We appreciate their thinking of our students. Would call the roll, Mr. Trafalski?
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Bothist?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item up is the five-year forecast, and this is not going to be as thrilling as STEM, as mental health, and athletics, but it is something that we need to do.
Okay. You might want to put your microphone closer to you then for this. Thank you.
We don't want to miss a word of this.
Okay. It's the main event here.
Yes.
So you can listen to me talk, and I can be either very short or we can be really long. So, okay, so five-year forecast. Even before we get into asking for it to be approved, I want to do a little bit of talking about this. So the five-year forecast has to be done twice a year. This is encouraging and forcing school districts to always continually be looking at their budgets. Budgets change, things change in the community, the climate, the state, and the United States, and so we need to be looking at this twice a year. So the purpose of the five-year forecast is to engage the community and the Board of Education in long-term planning and financial discussions. It is the basis for Talawanda's 412 certificate, allowing us to enter into contracts, and allows ODE and the Auditor of State to identify districts at risk. And I apologize, I am supposed to be motioning to Matt when to move. So tonight we're going to be looking at our revenues, our expenses, and how these two play an effect on our end-of-year cash balance. What I want everyone to understand is that this is just a snapshot of what is going on and what we know at this moment in time that this information was compiled. Do I think that fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27 will reflect the same numbers that I am reporting on right now? Absolutely not. It is, once again, what I know at this moment of time, and I'm using my best judgment, using historical facts and consumer price indexes and all of that for each little component of the categories. So I would be absolutely floored if 26 and 27 are reflective, as of right now, into the future. Again, it's very hard to predict what's going to happen 4 to 5 years from now. We take existing data and add simulations and inflationary indexes to each and every category. This is why they're called assumptions, and by law we must update these twice a year, as I stated. And now that we've gone through all of that, let's go to the next page and talk about just a snapshot. So this is actually one of my favorite graphs and screenshots because it literally gives you a sense of just the revenue, the expenses, the ending cash balance, and whether we are in the black for the year or whether we are in the red. Are we deficit spending or do we have a little bit of a surplus? So this is taking away the nuts and bolts of the revenue, each component. It's taking away the nuts and bolts of the expenditures and condensing it to make it into a very simple format. So when you take a look at this, we are seeing an annual increase in revenue. It's just about 1.2% every year. We are seeing, unfortunately, increases in expenses because things are costing more money. You know, it is the way it is. We have salary schedules. We have materials that are costing more money. So expenses are increasing at a rate of 1.4% for this forecast. But remember what I have stated, it is very hard to forecast 3 to 5 years out. So we really need to take that information and just take it with a grain of salt for right now. You know, it's a guide, but it's not hard and fast. So with the next slide, Matt, this graph is showing our revenue on the blue line, and you know, it's perfectly showing fiscal year 20 through fiscal year 22, and it's an estimate that it will continue to increase in the future. We've got the red line that is steadily increasing as well. We are spending, as of fiscal year 19, we have been spending more than we have brought in, except for last year, and that is due to the delay in the bus and maintenance garage. So you're going to see that big B line, that big hiccup in fiscal year 20, and then it starts to settle back into its normal pattern. And the green line indicates our ending cash balance, and as we deficit spend, we are eroding at our cash reserves. Next page is just a snapshot of our revenue drivers. You know, we've got 43% of our income comes from real estate. It's our property taxes. 24% comes from our school district income tax. That's the 1% income tax. 27% comes from the state, and this is not just ODE and our tuition per pupil that we collect. It is our rollback. It is our homestead. And then 6% of our income comes from our investment income, our special ed tuition that we collect from other districts, our Medicaid reimbursements, and any prior year refunds that may have been returned and, you know, we're being paid back. Next page, Matt. So, unfortunately, I put 2 of these graphs in here. I couldn't condense it, and I was trying to, you know, shorten the pages, et cetera, et cetera. But what a few years back, actually, Mr. Otto, you're the one who said that you like to see the difference in from forecast to forecast. What's different? What are the variances in it? And so I like to capture that now. So the top graph here is a reflection of each category, each year, how it is different from May. So we're seeing a real estate. I'm anticipating a little bit more each year. We have a problem with our PUP, which we will get into later. But this is a direct correlation. You can see what category and how it's different from May's forecast. The bottom slide is what I really want to focus on, though, in that it is a very distinct grid as far as what the local community is having to pay for our students' education compared to the state. Local funding is the red, it's skyrocketing there, and the state funding is gold, and you can see that it is very flat throughout the years. We are not getting any more money coming in from the state. So, Matt, you can change the... So here's the fun part. Not really, but we're going to go over a little bit of each category and the highlights of what I think is different and what I think we need to be paying attention to now and in the future. So property taxes. Although property valuations increased with the last county reappraisal, we will not necessarily see an increase in revenue as most property owners would assume. House Bill 920 does cap us to what was voted in and approved and certified by the county auditors at the time that it was passed at the ballot. So the only new revenue that will be coming in for this category would be new construction. We are estimating a 2% increase in collections for fiscal year 23, and then a modest 1.4 increase in the outlying years. PUP, this is our public utilities. We have the Rockies pipeline dispute that is still going on. They are disputing their valuation with the Ohio Department of Taxation. And until this is settled, they get to pay the lower rate as if they had already won. Talawanda does not get a voice in this dispute. We are solely reliant on Ohio Department of Taxation, and if they are feeling kind or if they are feeling like they would like to put it a little bit of dig. Maybe that was not fair, but I like to have a voice in these type of matters, and so I have carried this reduction all throughout the forecast. I didn't want to predict when the Department of Taxation might settle on this. I just carried the reduction all throughout the forecast. If the pipeline loses their case, we will be made whole for the entire portion going backwards. And this will be treated as a windfall in the year that it happens, and it will be noted in one of these forecasts. The school district income tax, this is the biggest difference from the May forecast. So I have been extremely conservative in my approach to revenue. I don't want to be enthusiastic and assume that the economy is going to do great and then fall flat on my face and have to explain why I assume such a high value. So in the past, I have always assumed a 1.8% annual increase. So, but based on our first two collections in this fiscal year, we've had a slight little boom. So for the next two collections, I am utilizing a 2.7% increase. We are going to have, if all things turn out correctly, a 9.6% increase for this fiscal year. And then I did take that 2.7 and carried it through the rest of the forecast. So that is an increase from 1.8 to 2.7 in the outlying years, and that is going to reflect a higher collection in revenue. So that is, that's the biggest change from May to November. I just wanted to point that out, and I'm telling you what, it may have been a gamble, and I thought long and hard about whether to, leave my comfort zone in that 1.8. But darn it, I was feeling daring, and I wanted to gamble a little bit. And, I still feel really good about my decision, but I may be eating crow next November this time. So we'll see. Let's hope not. State aid is next, and this is for both unrestricted and restricted. Unrestricted is that's the basic aid that we are receiving from the state, and it's okay. Restricted is the DPIA. It is for the gifted tuition. It's career tech. We are restricted in how we can spend the funds. It's also the student wellness money that used to be a separate grant and a separate fund. It's now in this Fair School funding formula, and it is built in there. So I planned both of those categories based on the October number 2 foundation payment, and then carried it flat throughout the forecast. The only difference in this is that I did do a 2% increase in our casino tax, the casino tax revenue that we get per pupil from the state. So that did receive a 2% increase. Rollback and homestead, very modest, 0.77% increase throughout the forecast. And for all the other revenue, it is flat except for our investment income. I did give that a boost based on what has been going on these past 4 months. So that is it for the revenue. We are going to move on to the expense drivers, Matt. And this is once again a snapshot of where our money is going. And you can quickly see that 67% is going to personnel and fringe benefits, 17% is going into purchase services, 2% supplies and materials, 12% capital outlay and equipment, and 2% dues and fees. I want to point out that normally our personnel is 73% of our annual budget, but because we have that bus and maintenance project in the general fund and in the capital outlay, it's kind of skewing the numbers a little bit. So next year you will be seeing that jump back up to 73, 74%. Next page, Matt. Same as the revenue, I did a screenshot of what is different from May. So, if you see 110,000, we spent 110,000 more in actuals in May than what I had projected for fiscal year 22. We're projecting, 548,000 less in personnel. So this is a snapshot of the puts and takes for each of the categories in each of the years and comparing it, the net difference from May. Down below, we are going to see the pretty graph with all the nice colors, and you can see, once again, for the people who like graphs and understand that better than listening to me drone on and on. It's pretty steady. We've got our wages, we have our benefits, we have our purchase services. In fiscal year 23, in the purple, you see a big jump in capital outlay. That is our bus and maintenance garage project, and then it settles back down in the outlying years. The biggest change in the categories for this year in outlying years is our benefits, our health insurance premiums that are going up. So if we go on to the next page, we'll talk a little bit more about each of these categories. In the payroll, we are seeing some of the hard work that the leadership team has done in saving money through attrition. I also want to point out that we were able to supplant $483,000 worth of personnel into the ESSER 2 money, or the ESSER 2 fund, from fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. That is huge, having been able to move that personnel into a federal grant. Now, we are going to have to bring them back, but we've seen a little bit of relief the past couple of years. We are in the second year of our union contract with a 1% COLA for this year and a 0% COLA for next year. We will start negotiations in calendar year 24, but for this forecast, I have assumed a 2% COLA and a 2% step fiscal year 25 through 27. There are a number of districts who will plan 0. And I believe 100% that gives a false sense of security in our cash balance, our end of year cash balance, and I don't want to do that. So 2 and 2 is how I chose to budget it. Benefits, once again, this is where we're seeing the largest increase. We're going to start a 17.9% increase January of 2023, and based on the projections, all Butler County treasurers and even some in Dayton who are part of our Butler Health Plan are taking this same approach as far as scaling it down 2% each year in the outlying years until we get to 9% in fiscal year 27. This is being extremely conservative. So it would be a really nice break if next year we do not need, the 15.9% that I have budgeted. But for the time being, I would rather be cautious. Purchase services. One of the big swings that you're going to see is that in May, the bus and maintenance garage was in purchase services. It is now in capital outlay where it belongs. And so literally you are going to see that the negative of the $2 million, but you're going to see the swing in capital outlay increase, plus the $2.1 million that we needed for that project due to the increase in the cost of bids that came in, and then the contingency that the board decided to grant this project for the what-ifs. In this category, I just want to remind everyone that purchase services is still very heavy on personnel with transportation, our outsourced custodians in Kramer in the high school, our substitute teachers, and our special ed consultants that are hired to assist with our students. Tuition to other entities, College Credit Plus, our utilities, equipment repair, all fall into this category as well. And I did follow the same pattern as I did in May. So the big nugget here is that $2 million decrease from May. And you're going to be seeing it shortly when we talk about capital outlay. Supplies and materials, we continue to supplant as much as we can into the ESSER 2 grants. We already utilized and supplanted technology into the CARES Act, the original ESSER 1 money. So we do continue. If we're allowed to do it, we swing it on in there, which is giving a lot of relief to the general fund. Capital outlay, as I've told you, there is a swing, and it's primarily due to the bus and maintenance garage. The project is budgeted for $4.1 million, with the remainder being the one-to-one initiative that the board approved back in 2014, 2015, and equipment necessary in the buildings and grounds. So in the outlying years, I have followed that same one-to-one plan that was previously adopted. Page. Wow, we were going through this pretty quickly. I need to slow down. No. I need to start talking faster, I guess. All right, so we are wrapping this back to the original, one of the first screenshots. Once again, showing the revenue, the expenses, deficit spending. The difference with this one is that down below, you can see what it costs average per month as far as our expenditures. You can see the average expenditures per day, and then down below, it goes into how many months on hand we have at year end and how many days cash we have on hand at year end. And you're going to see that I have always stressed that 90 days is my comfort zone as far as how much cash we should have on hand. Some people, GFOA recommends 30 days. That makes me have a lot of sleepless nights. 60 days is what other school districts do. I'm personally comfortable with 90 days. It's not a hard and fast, it's just a Shauna dream to have 90 days of cash on hand. And you'll see that that falls between fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26. Matt, next slide, please. Once again, in this slide, for the people who are visual and do not want to listen or read I think it's 15, 18 pages of the forecast, although it is good reading material at night, trust me. But it's a quick snapshot. Revenue in blue, expenses in red. Yellow is our ending cash balance, except the orange line is the 90-day threshold. So it kind of gives you a ballpark of, on a graph, where we're falling in on that. And then down below, it does just highlight, our trend in fiscal year 20. We ended with 230 days worth of cash. Fiscal year 27, as of today, I am projecting 5 days worth of cash at the end of fiscal year 27. Now, the next 2 pages have absolutely nothing to do with the forecast, but with a lot of the discussion that happened during the levy. I thought might be kind of nice to just highlight some of the other funds that are very restrictive in nature, but that we don't talk about a lot. So the first one up is our 002 fund, and this is our debt and our bonds. This was the voted bonds for the high school and Bogan. At the end of fiscal year 22, the cash balance was $2.9 million. Our outstanding Bogan and THS debt is $29 million. We generate about $3.8 million between these two bonds every year, and it does go towards paying the debt, and the county auditor does ramp it down every year to ensure that we will not be collecting any more than is necessary to pay this debt off. So Bogan and the high school will both be paid off in 2030. And then the next item up is our Permanent Improvement Fund. This is our 003 fund. This is to pay for capital outlay that has a life greater than a minimum life of 3 years, but preferably greater than 5 years. So we ended fiscal year 22 with $1.2 million. This is where Kramer and Marshall debt is being booked to. This is our COPS debt, and we still owe just about $13.6 million on this. Kramer will be paid off in 2038, and Marshall will be paid off in 2042. And our annual revenue for this fund is just about $1.3 million. Next slide up, and then I promise we're going to be done. But I wanted to highlight the pandemic grants that we have received. We've talked about this in the past at board meetings. We have shared a couple of slides as far as how we're spending the money, what has been completely utilized, what has not. But I just thought it might be a nice idea to just kind of share exactly what we have gotten. So we have the CARES Act funds, the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. All 3 of these are part of that emergency secondary. Don't ask me what the other 3 words are. To me, it's just ESSER. So in total, we are bringing in $4.1 million. And like I said before, we are trying to supplant as much as possible, moving general fund dollars in there. We've been able to move permanent improvement funds in here. So not only giving relief to our general fund, but our permanent improvement fund as well. So we're trying to be very strategic in what we do to buildings, and how we can improve Talawanda and best utilize these grants. I do also want to point out some of these other miscellaneous ones that helped so that our general fund did not have to spend money during COVID, as far as paying for all of those hot spots, paying for a lot of the cleaning supplies and equipment that was necessary, the personal, the PPE, so the coronavirus relief funds of $176,000, the broadband connectivity. If we had not applied and received these grants, that money would have tapped the general fund in order to keep our staff and our students safe. We were awarded last year the IDEA Part B, which is part of the ARP ESSER 3, Early Childhood Special Ed, once again ARP, part of the ESSER 3, but this is focused on the special ed and early childhood special ed students. And we received very graciously sub-grants from the City of Oxford and Oxford Township. And I know that we have mentioned this before, but I really like to highlight that because these are wonderful partners for our community, within our community, who are sharing their funds with us. So $16,000 came from the City of Oxford, and that helped purchase some iPads and I think it was cleaning supplies, at the top of my head. And Oxford Township, once again, they purchased a lot of the backpack spray cleaners that we still utilize today, and Chromebooks, and a lot of the sub teachers that were coming in. So $116,000 from Oxford Township. So in all, to date, the pandemic grants is sitting at $4.7 million. I wanted to highlight that because I don't know if it gets looked at often enough. So we are coming to the end, I promise, Pat, I promise. But I have to say, there has been some discussions fluttering around social media that I just can't let ignore, that is talking about that we found $2.5 million magically between May and today. And so I hope that in explaining how, with the school district income tax, I switched it from a 1.8% to a 2.7%. There's little puts and takes here and there. That changes the forecast. And it can change daily, depending upon what is going on. So we are not trying to mislead anyone. We spend a lot of time on this forecast twice a year. We look at it. I look at it sometimes daily throughout the year, but if not, at least it's monthly. So we are not trying to mislead anyone. It is literally the facts that we have at hand at the time that we are compiling this data. It is the best information we have, and then we are using our best judgment. So, as I said, these numbers can change at a moment's notice if cuts are made or if additional revenue is brought in that was not anticipated. And as I stated, we do not have a crystal ball to magically think up these numbers. We spend a lot of time and effort on these numbers for you all. And I'd like to say that we cannot treat this forecast as our Bible. It needs to be treated as a guide and our playbook on how we think we need to move forward. So Pat, I'm done.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, well, what we'll do is take a motion and to
Okay,
approve the
sorry.
forecast, and we'll do questions and
Sorry.
discussion.
Yes.
So, can I get a motion to approve the 5-year forecast as
So
presented?
moved.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. In a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bothus. Now for questions, comments, and a discussion, because I think this warrants a discussion. Obviously, we just had a tax levy that did not pass. So the voters have said that all the things we're doing for children and the staff and all the ways we're spending money, we need to find a way to spend less and do less. And those, of course, will be difficult decisions. So what I'd like to do tonight in response to the 5-year forecast is give Shauna or Ms. Trafalski and Dr. Thoreau some guidelines about how much cuts we want to do in the next 1, 2, 3 years out, and then direct them to go through items in the budget and our programs, the many things we do for students, how much each of those things cost, and obviously anything that is not mandated is on the table. So no sacred cows. So sports, busing, all the different programs we do for the students, we have to look at, and the ones that are not mandated, we should figure out what are they costing, and if we have to cut programs for 1 year, which ones do we cut in the first year? If we have to cut more in a second year, how many more do we cut in the second year? If we have to cut more in the third year, how many do we cut in the third year, and what are they? So I'm going to throw out some numbers, but then let other members of the board have input on that. And what I would like to see over 3 years is a graduated approach, because that gives the community time to respond after each set of cuts. Oh, is this the education we want? Or please cut more. Is that the education we want for our children? No, please take more away. And after the third time, is that the educated we want? And then we'll have to go from there. So I'm looking for a 3-year plan, so to speak, and I want to see it graduated. So I would say like at least 1.2 million in the first year, 1.7 in the second year, and 2.4 in the third year, which means over $5 million over those 3 years. We do have reserve funds, so I realize that doesn't address the entire deficit spending, but with the reserve funds, which the taxpayers gave us that money to spend on children, not to sit in the bank. So spending down the reserve funds and cutting the deficit is a two-pronged approach. And then 3 years out, if we still have to keep going, we'll still have to keep going. But it gives the community a chance to respond along the way. Yes, that's what we meant. What you have now in place for students is what we want for them. Or no, you need to cut more. So I don't know if anybody has any different ideas, since you might have different numbers or a different way to approach it. Or if you're all good with that, that would be pleasant.
Well, I think it's a good starting point. Look at it and see what what Ed and Shauna bring to the table, and we can look at that. I think, but it gives them some direction to go forward with.
My concern is it's not enough for that first year. You're saying 1.2, right?
Right.
That maybe we should start at 1.5. I'm just going to throw that out there,
Okay.
too.
So thrown.
This is a preliminary discussion about potential targets. This is not a motion regarding
No.
our plan, right?
We're just giving them general direction. They will come back with specifics. We'll have a work session and look at all the specifics. And then in December, January, after we go through those, I think we should, as soon as we can, say, here's what's on the table next year. It's going. There is no chance to undo that. Because it gives staff and parents a chance to plan for the things that are going to be taken away. This is going to impact parents greatly. The cuts are going to impact parents greatly. It's going to impact students greatly. It gives them time. So you want to get that out as soon as possible. And then the second and third year plans are sitting there. It's spelled out what our intentions are, a second and third year should we need to do that, so people can look down the road and say, okay, I know where this is headed with the level of community support and the money that's coming in. Obviously, that'll have to be adjusted as five-year forecasts have to be adjusted when reality hits. You know, in the middle of next year, we'll have to look at that goal of 1.7 the year after and say, maybe it should be more, maybe it should be less, depending on how things change. None of this is, it's sort of general goals. If we say 1.2 and Dr. Throw and Mr. Fauski come back and we have a work session and we say, oh, these are the things in the first year, it may end up at more than that, and that's fine. We won't want it to end up less than that, is my thought. That is a minimum. So it gives us room to maybe have a little higher number, depending on how we want to approach it and how we want to. There's no way we are not going to hurt children. But how do we want to minimize that and be prepared for that and give parents and staff time to make adjustments before the reality sets in?
I would say, with Mr. Mead, I would say that going low and then getting specifics and then realizing at that point what the true cost would be, I think it would be wise to start low and then try to achieve higher cuts instead of setting the bar too high that we won't be able to achieve it. So I'm with you on the 121724. I will say, just because I feel called to say so, that I have my gut is hurting right now because we are negotiating the value of our children's education on the board right now. It's making me sick to my stomach. We're auctioning our children. This is not great.
Okay. And then Dr. Thoreau and Mr. Fauski, I'll get with you tomorrow and put out some dates for a work session, hopefully before the next board meeting early in December, and we can get together. Yes?
Well, I just want to think about the criteria we use and just keeping ourselves really honest in terms of there's a lot of accusations thrown around about us ignoring parts of the district or representing parts of the district or not representing parts of the district. And so I really want us to think about, that we're not favoring one part or the other, that our cuts are impacting across the board fairly or unfairly, as the case may be, but everybody equally unfairly, and that we are really trying to be clear about doing this equitably and without favoritism. And so just keeping ourselves accountable to that metric as well.
Because everything is on the table that is not mandated. So from top to bottom, across the district, every grade level, every part of the organization, every department, look for it all.
Are we giving them a number?
And I know you've already done that.
So the numbers you're putting out there are starting with next school year.
Next school year.
Are we giving them numbers to start in the spring?
Well, I think if you bring to the work session, I would think yes. If you bring to the work session ideas of things we can cut right now, I think that's okay to bring those to the work session. We can have that discussion of what can be cut right now. I know that's more difficult because we're in the middle of the contract and, we have mandates from the state and we also have contracts with our staff and with other entities that we can't change right now. So I know we're more limited in the spring and we want to make sure we're being fair to everyone. So if there are things for the spring, certainly bring those as well.
So can I just repeat so I'm clear on this, and I want to make sure that we're clear, because this is just a direction. It is not that it is a voted in type decision at this point in time, but it is talking about the step process as we are listening to the voters and voting down the levy as we're talking about managing our budgets. You've said it is going to be. When we're talking about approximately, with purchase service, about 80% of our budget being staffing is going to be some sort of program. So what I heard is, look for something that we can do this school year. Now, I will caution everybody, and everybody that's out here listening, there are things you can't touch once a school year gets started. So some may say, well, why can't you cut busing, for instance? You can't. Busing is started, you can't do that. Could, if busing is a choice, that could be something next year. So I just as you alluded to with the contract, it's more than just contract. It is also what ODE, what the state and federal requirements will let us do this year. We're going to be limited this year in what we can do. And I'm just being honest with you on it. But with our team, Shauna, I shouldn't say I, we will come up with something for this school year. The next school year will be a menu of options. This is in my head, a menu of options and choices with costs next to it, approximate costs next to it, and we're going to get to $1.2 million or so. And then the next year, the second year, would be $1.7 million or so. Third year would be $2.4 million or so. We would be looking at each year to make sure, because we don't know what happens. For instance, is student funding formula changed to the positive? That may help us, and we might make a decision. Don't come. It can go the other way too. We could have some sort of mechanical failure, roof failures. You just got to cover those types of things that would cause us, and we should go back and review. I heard a work session. I know we can get this done pretty quickly and get a work session. We've already started to wrap our heads around it. I will tell you, our staff is very appreciative of knowing the information. Ethically, like you said, even for our families and parents, to put it out there. So you'll know this year what next year will be, and probably the next 2 years, what that would look, so that you can make additional decisions from everybody. It will be hard and difficult decisions. I would like to have this work session. We'll work with you before we go on winter break, not Thanksgiving break, but before the December break, and maybe even in December, as you had stated, or January's board meeting, to actually maybe be ready for a board decision. So that, I'm just reflecting, these are the steps. I also heard in public session they'd like to have it videotaped. There's a problem with it being videotaped anywhere but this room. So that is something we can discuss. If we wanted the work session right here. The equipment is mounted. The equipment to move will take about 4 hours, Matt, 5 hours to take down and move, like to the media center or something like that. That's problematic. It's problematic with the amount of hours. We have school going on at those point in times, and my recommendation is not. So if the board would like it to be videotaped, we're going to have to sit here to do that type of work. And we can. I'm just going to throw that out, because some people make assumptions that it's very easy to move and tape wherever you want, and that is not the case. When you know we purchased this equipment not too long ago because we were piecemealing it to get us to be able to do the YouTube and videotape. Now we actually have a good system. We have a good sound system. You actually can see it. Our board members can even see the screen from sitting behind. So I just,
Okay.
I'm putting them.
To address Dr. Howard's statement earlier, though, I'm not questioning starting low. I think that's the smart way to move. But, I mean, we have 5 schools, thousands of kids, hundreds of square miles that we deal with, 180 some odd days a year. $1.2 million cuts, that's one thing going wrong. I mean, it's cutting a lot of programming. It's hurting a lot of kids. But that, if one big sewer pipe issue happens or whatever, I mean, that's going to eat up that entire savings right there. But it's going to hurt a lot of kids otherwise in a lot of other programming.
We're going to have to do too. I mean, I think if something like that happens, we've got to be prepared to come back to the table, and that's a deeper discussion. So what we've decided in the 1.2, and so we had another issue, we're going to have to find that amount of money on top of it. Man. So, and that's just thinking worst case scenario, and I don't think that's going to happen. But we have our marching orders.
Okay.
And I believe we're okay.
Okay. Shauna, could you, using the current 5-year forecast, plug that in, these cuts in, to see where that would end, where that would put us?
As far as the 1.7 and 2.4,
Right.
we would have,
We can have that at the work session. We don't need that now, but
oh,
if you
She
have it,
has-
you don't want it right now?
if you
You can
have it,
give it-
that's great.
Yeah.
So that would follow the 90-day rule that I like. That would get us 99 days at the end of 2030.
So that pushes us back. It doesn't solve our issue to 2030. But then we would have to have ongoing discussions, as you had said, and maybe some more, depending on what the
Right.
community decides.
And if things keep going the way they're going, we'll be able to see what happens to Ross to determine what's going to happen when the state comes in, unless they get it together. But right now, I'd like to call a vote on 6F, the 5-year forecast. If you could call the roll, Ms. Chafowski.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Bothus?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Thank you.
I would just like to say before we move on, I would like to thank you for this very exhaustive effort. I would like to remind, the community that all of this information is available, that the treasurer's, Ms. Tefelsky has put so much work into the treasurer section of our website. There is so much information available on that website. And Ms. Tefelsky, I have heard this from so many community members. You know, I asked a question, I sent her an email, and I didn't expect to get a response, for days or weeks. And the next morning, she sent me an email or she called me. So she really has put a lot into this. And if you want information, if you see a number that doesn't sound right to you, that you have a question about, rather than throwing it out there on Facebook and asking, Facebook University for this information, get to our website, ask Ms. Tefelsky, and she will clarify any misinformation or any questions that you have. So thank you for all of this work
Thank you.
that you've done on this.
Thank you.
Moving on.
Okay, I have one more item, and it is recommended, this is 6G, and it is recommended that the board approve the solicitation of sealed bids for the purchase of 1,300 Chromebooks for the THS and Talawanda Middle School one-to-one program. So this follows our one-to-one initiative. This has been budgeted for. We are, because of the volume of it and the price tag of it, we are just doing what is best practice and advertising and soliciting sealed bids versus normal practice of just receiving 3 quotes. So.
All right, can I get a motion to approve 6G?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Abowitz. In a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Otto. Any questions? Okay, if you could call the roll, Ms. Chafowski.
Knight Abowitz. Mr. Otto.
Yes.
Mr. Bothus.
Yes.
Dr. Howard.
Yes.
Mr. Mead.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any informational items?
You really want me to talk
No,
some more?
I appreciate all the information you gave us tonight. We'll move on to the report of the superintendent.
Good evening. I am asking to block items. I am asking for the approval of 7A1, approval of the teacher contract, which is the 4-5 reading teacher, which is COVID money, just letting you know that we haven't filled. This will be the last position. They end it this year. 7A2, approval of building substitute teachers, again, COVID money. 7A3, acceptance of a resignation of a building substitute teacher. 7A4, approval of unpaid child care leave of absence for a teacher. 7B1, approval of limited employment classified staff contracts. That's an EA in the office. That's a food service worker. 7B2, approval of substitute classified staff employees when people are absent. That's educational assistant, a food service, and a custodian. 7C1 It is the approval to rescind a supplemental contract previously approved. 7C2, the approval of supplemental contracts for bowling, girls and boys, Destination Imagination, and World Language Coordinator, and a great opportunity, I'm asking for the approval of 7D, an overnight field trip for high school students. Is the Setting Stones Club magazine for the students to go to New York.
Thank you. Dr. Thoreau?
May I just add one more item to that? Just a comment, rather. And this is for the 4th and 5th grade reading teacher coming out of the ESSER funds. This is coming out of ESSER 3, which is the ARP funds, which we are not allowed to supplant. This has to be a new initiative for intervention, learning intervention. So this is the one item where we can't just move people in. It has to be a new person.
And we have 2 already that are in the other 2 buildings. It just took time to find somebody to hire for this position.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to approve 7A, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 7B, 1 and 2, 7C, 1 and 2, and 7D?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bothus.
Yes, sir.
In a second.
Second?
Thank you, Dr. Howard. Any questions or comments? All right, if you would call the roll, Mr. Fauske.
Mr. Bothus?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Motion passes.
I am asking, this is a second reading, and I'm going to explain a little bit. I'm asking for the recommendation for the board to approve a second reading, it's actually the third reading, of policy revisions for what were presented at the first and second reading for the weapons. After listening to our board members and the concerns that they had, after listening to public session and the concerns that individuals had at public sessions, myself and Mr. Malone went back and we found that there was an issue in when we copied and pasted or pulled it over, that the C language shouldn't have been there, as was brought up. So what we've done is we've listened to what was shared with us, and we believe we have corrected it if the board feels free or wants to accept this. This is their point in time.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve 7E?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Abowitz. In a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bothus. Any questions or comments?
So is this a NOLA language then that we'll be using?
Oh, yes, it is Neola. So again, there was an inconsistency done when we had brought it forward, and we got it from Neola, and that language should have been cleared up or crossed out, not there, and it was there. So it was a problem, and actually this board and we had a public member that actually caught the issue. So
Thank you.
it's fixing the mistake.
Any other questions, comments?
Just thank you and Mr. Malone for going back and finding that.
I appreciate you. That's why we have board meetings to work out and find those types of stuff. And I apologize for that.
You call the roll, Mr. Fauske?
Dr. Knight Abowitz? Mr. Bothus?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Motion passes.
So for informational items, I don't really have anything except I was going to go over the steps and the steps of the next steps, and you have clarified that earlier so that everybody understands our next steps in our process moving. We also have some contractual obligations to do here, and we will talk about that in the work session. We made a little bit of that, but we also have our TEA contracts, we have our classified contracts, we have like our bus contracts, our Alpha Omega contracts. There's a lot of things,
Right.
but we will come through and we will have that discussion.
Okay.
I want to make sure people understand, too, that we are having these discussions as well with representatives from the unions. So we're not just unilaterally making these decisions and imposing them. We are actually communicating with the union representatives as well, so.
Our staff is amazing, and I
They are
can't speak
amazing.
enough, even under these concerns, even though they're worried about the students and the progress. And, you know, I am going to say this, you know, there's been some comments. I'm in my 5th year, 4 years. When I came here 5 years ago, our people like to use the report card grades. I have issues with the report card grades. I've been very fair in explaining why I have issues. But when I came here, we had an elementary building that was rated in the D's and F levels. We are now, even going through COVID, and even though they changed it, the star rating almost comes out A, B, C, D, F,
Right.
with the 3 stars, 4 stars, 1, 2 stars. We have improved our grades. We have improved our graduation rate, which is the biggest indicator that I think we need to look at. It was 92% when I came here. We are up to 96.6%. Some of these decisions that are difficult are going to impact some of those metrics that people keep bringing us back to that want to judge us on. And again, I have some of those issues, but I do believe in a graduation rate because it is important to get kids across that line in 4 years. We have a 5th year in some cases. And then for our students who need those services through age 21, absolutely. And nobody, I think, would argue that. So I want to say we are doing more than an average or a subpar service for what we're doing. You heard some of the information. That's why we do presentations. Our strategic plan will need to be adjusted. There are lots of things that will be adjusted as we make these decisions going forward.
Okay, thank you. Now for items from the board, our organizational meeting, we're going to set a date. It's January 12th. It's 7 o'clock. I think we'll let Mr. Bothus be president pro tem if nobody has any objection to that. Always falls to the newest member. At least that's the tradition. The other dates that have been put out on the agenda should be okay, but at the organizational meeting is when we actually vote on and say these are when the board is meeting.
I would just like to put this out there, if we could consider moving it from the third Thursday to the second Thursday.
Okay.
I have conflicts in February, April, and October, consistently on the third Thursday. This year, I've been able to work around them. It's going to get a little more challenging next year. And it would also align with our August meeting, which is always on the second Thursday or the second week because of start of school. So
Right. Thank you. We will have time between now and January to work some of that out. Does anybody else have any other items they would like to bring up?
Not yet.
Okay.
So what I
Microphone.
would like to do is give Shauna and I a little breath, and then we'll work with Pat, because
And then you'll contact-
I want to make
okay.
sure I have everything
That's fine. I
in,
just didn't
in
want
a
to
nice
miss it.
document that works for my mind, but might not work for other people.
No, I don't want to rush that process.
But-
Sorry, I just wanted to
But
make sure I didn't miss any.
our goal would be to do it soon before we get out.
I want to know if I can have a space heater up here next month. I don't know
I'm
what
gonna
it's
dress
like
more
out there,
warmly,
but
I
it
know.
is cold up here.
That was the first thing we cut.
I want you to
cut from the
come
budget.
to our
We're
office.
saving, we're saving money.
Because
back here.
our
We're saving
office
money.
is
On heat.
heated a lot worse.
I'm going to
and
bring a
colder.
sweater next month, so, okay.
Mr. President, before we adjourn, I would like to, since I'm the Student Achievement Liaison, I'd like to encourage anyone in the community, if you have any stories that you would like to share with me, to send it to my email, please. It's on the school board website. Stories about your children and the positive experiences you've had in the Talawanda programming with them, their memories, and how you would like to cut those things from our programming. Let me know. It's all available publicly.
Thank you, Mr. Bothus. Our next board meeting will be December 15th, and with that, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bothus. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Abowitz. Would you call the roll, please, Ms. Stafowski?
Mr. Bothus,
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz,
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.